3 drones, 6 minutes, one silence that changed everything. They came like shadows across a sleeping sky, no sound, no warning, no name. For years, the night above Africa had belonged to someone else. The hum of foreign engines was a familiar ghost. Satellites watched. Drones drifted. Data was taken. But that night, over Burkina Faso, something was different. For the first time, the sky pushed back. No announcement, no press conference, no viral footage. Just a moment that slipped through the dark, seen only by those who were awake and by those who would soon realize the balance of power had quietly shifted. It began like so many stories of this land dew with whispers carried by the wind. Farmers in the Sahel heard it first, a strange low pulse over the fields, too steady to be thunder, too patient to be wind. They said it came at midnight, moving slowly across the stars. Some ignored it. Others felt uneasy, a hum that never ended, never spoke, and never landed. Soon, herders in the north began to see faint lights gliding in perfect rhythm, dots that blinked without pattern, but always returned to the same stretch of sky. The desert, vast and unguarded, had become a theater for something invisible. No one could say what it was, but in Ouagadougou, the reports kept coming. Radar technicians saw strange returns at low altitude. Not aircraft, not weather. Something in between, deliberate, coordinated, precise. The Defense Command began to take notice. 3 sectors, 3 patterns, always after midnight. Always circling the same zones, military corridors, mining belts, and the fragile borderlines that marked the heart of Burkina Faso's sovereignty. To the untrained eye, it was surveillance. But to those who understood strategy, it was preparation. And the man who understood it most was Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He wasn't surprised. He had seen it before, the quiet erosion of control that begins not with invasion, but with observation. The idea that a nation can be studied, mapped, and known better by outsiders than by its own people. He had promised his soldiers something simple. No one watches us without our consent. When the reports crossed his desk, his order was equally simple. Find them, track them, and when the moment comes, end them. What followed was not noise, but calculation. The Burkina Faso defense teams worked in near silence, using equipment far humbler than the technology they were preparing to confront. There were no billion-dollar systems, no satellite networks, no foreign experts, just men and women tuning machines by hand, listening to static reading patterns in the air. They cross-checked radio frequencies, measured drone signatures, and compared the invisible trails that electronic eyes leave behind. Night after night, they found consistency: 3 crafts, synchronized, encrypted, flying the same invisible triangle above the north. The pattern wasn't accidental. It was methodical, mathematical, patient. Someone was watching more than terrain. They were watching troop movements, supply routes, and restricted defense lines. Whatever these machines were, they were not harmless, and they were not alone. Traore waited. He knew this wasn't just an issue of defense. It was something deeper: sovereignty, respect, and the right to exist unobserved. For too long, African skies had been treated like open ground for other people's experiments. Now, in one of the smallest, poorest, but most defiant corners of the continent, that quiet assumption was about to end. The night of the interception came without announcement. The air was still. The operator sat ready in a dimly lit room, screens glowing faint green. One blip appeared, then a second, then a third. 3 drones, low and confident, moving in perfect formation into the northern corridor. They had done it a dozen times before, but this time the sky was watching back. Weeks of preparation had built to this moment. Mobile anti-air units repositioned under camouflage. Radar tuned to frequencies the drones assumed were safe. Communications networks tightened like an invisible web. The team was silent, waiting. Then Traore's voice cut through the room, calm and absolute. Neutralize them. The first missile left no trail, only a flash that turned night into momentary daylight. The first drone disintegrated midair. The second tried to climb, turning sharply west, but another missile was already in flight. It struck true. The third attempted to jam the radar, twisting wildly, sending interference across the screen. For a few seconds, it vanished, and then a final missile found it in the dark. 6 minutes, 3 explosions, silence. The desert sky went black again, but something had changed. The watchers had been watched, the hunted had become the hunter. In command rooms, thousands of miles away, red lights blinked on dashboards that were never meant to flash. Questions began before dawn. How could this happen? How could a country with no major air defense, no satellite coverage, no Western hardware pull off a triple kill on classified drones? There was no official answer. No one claimed ownership. No one offered denial. Silence again, but heavier now, like the pause before a storm. Intelligence circles whispered that the drones were part of a broader mapping operation across the Sahel, collecting data on logistics, mineral corridors, and military bases. The kind of surveillance that rarely makes headlines but shapes policy behind closed doors. That night, the equation changed. One nation, long ignored, had declared that the sky above it was not free property. It belonged to its people. And by doing so, it forced others to confront a truth they had avoided. Power is no longer about who can fly higher, but about who dares to resist. Across African capitals, quiet discussions began. Defense ministries re-examined their radars. Pilots asked new questions. If Burkina Faso could see what others couldn't, what else was possible? The ripples spread farther than any missile could reach. But every victory has a shadow. In the months that followed, drone warfare in the Sahel took on a darker shape. The same skies that had once carried silent observers now carried new kinds of machines. Homemade drones, cheap and deadly, built by insurgent groups, using parts bought online. They buzzed above convoys, over marketplaces, even schools. The line between defense and fear blurred quickly. What had begun as a message of sovereignty was becoming a new kind of arms race, one fought not in the open, but in the clouds. In northern towns like Djibo, villagers looked up and no longer knew who owned the sky. Government, rebels, or something in between the hum was always there. The same sound that had once warned of foreign intrusion now carried local danger. Precision became chaos. Civilians suffered in silence, caught between defense and aggression, protection and destruction. The irony was bitter. The tool that defended sovereignty could just as easily undermine it. Traore knew this too. His message had never been about aggression. It was about dignity, the belief that a nation has the right to control its own story. But technology rarely stops where morality begins. When one side gains the power to strike unseen, the temptation to use it grows. And in a region already fragile, the consequences of that temptation can be catastrophic. By late 2024, international observers recorded a surge in drone strikes across the Sahel. Some targeted militants, some missed, some were never explained. Families buried their dead without answers. The silence returned. This time not from secrecy, but from exhaustion. Yet beneath it, a lesson endured. Sovereignty is not a gift. It is an act, one that must be renewed again and again. In the halls of power far from Ouagadougou, analysts debated what the Burkina Faso drone incident meant. Some called it a dangerous precedent, others a necessary awakening. But no matter the interpretation, the message was clear. The age of invisible surveillance had met its first resistance. A small nation had looked into the dark and refused to blink. No statement, no boasting, just proof. Proof that even the quietest countries can defend themselves when pushed too far. Proof that the sky, long claimed by those with wealth and machines, could still belong to those with conviction. And somewhere in the desert, where 3 small fires once burned against the night, the wind carried a new kind of silence, not of submission, but of warning. Because in this new world of drones and data, power is not defined by who sees, but by who dares to be seen. The Watchers had written their story for years, confident that no one could read it back. But on that night in Burkina Faso, the ink changed hands. The story did not end with an explosion. It began there. A story of sovereignty, of defiance, of a sky reclaimed. And in that reclaimed silence, the world was forced to listen.